Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Miami Open catch-up.
Djokovic denied 100th title as 19-year-old Mensik secures Maiden Masters.
Sabalenka sweeps past Pegula again for title.
And Kasatkina switches allegiance from Russia to Australia.
Kim, Chris, today is the 31st of March, and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ, brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. The Sunshine Swing has come to a close for another season with Jakob Mensik and Aryna Sabalenka, the champions, out in Miami. In a rain-affected weekend, Mensik defeated his idol, Novak Djokovic, to deny him a 100th tour title, while Semenka?
Semenka.
This is a great, off to a great start here. Whilst Aryna Sabalenka cemented, there we go, her top spot in the rankings with a classy performance against home favourite Jessica Pegula. In other news, Daria Kasatkina revealed she is swapping allegiances and will be representing Australia moving forward. And the European clay swing is upon us, which we will be previewing and talking about in the second half. But guys, we may not have got a century of titles up for Djokovic, but we do have another teenager announcing himself on the big stage.
We do, and we have potentially another title instead of the Sunshine Swing. What about, the Swamp Swing? It's feeling pretty...
The Rain Swing?
Wet?
The wet swing doesn't sound great, does it?
I just meant it's feeling pretty wet because there's been a lot of rain out in Miami.
I know.
And the sunshine was missing at parts.
How frustrating was it as kind of British fans? I was like looking forward Sunday evening, Sunday night, getting into the tennis. And I just was like on the Miami Open Twitter account, just getting these updates of no play before this, no play before that. And as soon as I knew it, it was going to be played like in the dead of night for UK fans.
It wasn't the best of updates, was it? It wasn't very clear. It just said lots of bad weather was coming, and I kept on thinking, are we going to get any tennis? But Joel, you look more rested. So did you stay up? Can you confess?
I watched it. I watched it back this morning, but I did wonder whether we were getting to a point of, because the ladies doubles had played like 3 games, the ladies doubles final, and I was really wondering if they were going to be really brave. And I'm glad they didn't, but I was wondering, due to some of the organizational mishaps we've had over the last couple of weeks from the Miami Open organizers, whether they were going to move that match because of all the bad weather happening.
Yeah, well, Joel, I thought you might have been primed for a late night because you've been in Amsterdam this week, and I imagine there were some late nights involved.
That jet lag from my trip to Amsterdam. No,
all the partying you were doing.
Yes, I had a lovely time in Amsterdam. First time in Amsterdam. What a lovely city. It's it reminded me of it's quite a compact city and very clean. Everyone was very friendly. So I really enjoyed myself.
Bringing back the travel segment, we used to do a bit more of that, didn't we? Kim in Mallorca was almost a bit of a
Kim,
feature.
Well,
yeah.
It's more going to be Chris in Mallorca, I think, because you are off next week, I believe, to the Rafa Nadal Academy. Dare I ask?
I'm actually cheating on the Rafa Nadal Academy. I'm actually off to another tennis academy. Yeah, I'm going to have a hit over in Mallorca. So the clay swing starts for me next week, and for most players on the tour, I think it probably will be next week as well. So Kim, you need to go somewhere in search of sunshine as well.
Well, I'm due to be going to Italy this week, but not to do any partying or play tennis. Just hopefully eat gelato.
It was a work trip, you were going to say.
Pasta. No, not working. Although one thing I have been doing is I've been catching up on the latest Agatha Christie adaptation, which has been on the BBC, as I like my detective fiction. And there's a tennis theme to it. The main character is a professional tennis player. And he's kind of messing around with the ladies, but there was a scene at Wimbledon, and it's very, very exciting. Always like to have a tennis storyline, shall we say, in something that I wasn't expecting it to be in.
Agatha Christie goes challenges. Who'd have thought?
Yes, quite. This episode is brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group,
the leading provider of travel, hospitality, and customer experiences at global sporting events, including this year's Roland Garros.
By booking with Sports Travel and Hospitality Group, tennis fans around the world can witness the pinnacle of the clay court season unfold, all the while indulging in luxurious hospitality that only Roland Garros can provide.
As an official agent of Roland Garros, Sports Travel and Hospitality Group guarantees you unrivaled views from the best seats in the house on Philippe Chatrier, as well as world-class cuisine and beverages served on site.
With Sports Travel and Hospitality Group, you also have access to the matches of your choosing, with 3 package tiers available across the entire tournament.
Learn more and book your Roland Garros hospitality package today at sportstravelhospitality.com/Roland-Garros. That's sportstravelhospitality.com/Roland-Garros.
So what are you waiting for? Secure your premium seat at Roland Garros today for a once-in-a-lifetime Grand Slam tennis experience.
The link is in the description.
What has been our highlights from the last week on tour? Joe, I'm going to come to you first. I think it might involve a certain Novak Djokovic.
It does. I don't know if you guys saw, but during his run to the final in his match against Seb Korda, on one of his changeovers, he was papped wearing some kind of blue cooling gloves. The temperature out in Miami, I mean, it's been a bit hit and miss, but basically when it's been too hot and you want to get your body temperature down, the players are trying to find these new innovative ways, I guess, to regulate their system. And Djokovic was doing this by wearing some cooling gloves, which I thought was very interesting. And I know he loves to sort of keep his body in shape. He's very known for that, and he's very open, I think, to interesting ideas. And I just thought this was quite a cool look, I think, on a changeover.
A cool look? Do you think that's
there we go.
Correct, is it? Or do you think, I mean, for me personally, I don't think it's a fashion moment. I'm not sure Lacoste are necessarily going to bring out a line of cooling gloves.
It's an ice cool look.
An ice cool look, yes. I mean, an ice cool look for an ice cold price, probably not very expensive from the look of things. It's giving sort of Temu. I'm not thinking.
Yeah. I wouldn't have had Djokovic at a sort of $20 price point.
No, it's not a cryogenic chamber, is it?
It makes me feel better about some of my picks, when I'm looking for products.
Your mittens.
Better. It's a better look, I think, than getting a towel, putting some ice cubes in it, getting the gaffer tape and kind of sticking it together at each of the ends. So I don't know. Is this a trend that is gonna carry on?
I quite like just throwing a bottle of water over my head. Obviously, with the lid open, I think that just cools me down.
If you see Kim, she might just be spritzing herself. Yeah.
What about you, though, Chris? Has there been anything that's caught your eye?
Well, I've been on the Challenger Tour. No cold gloves.
Challenger Tour. Okay.
Yes, I've dropped down a tier. As I want to do, I quite often like to follow what's happening. Sometimes I'm actually watching the final of a Challenger rather than the final of the ATP 1000. And this week I was watching Cilic, who was in action, obviously a Slam champion. And Joel, I've got some bad news for you, unfortunately. I've got to break it to you now that one of Andy Murray's records is gone. And it's not necessarily a record that you would be that familiar with, but it's the fact that Cilic now has the record for the longest gap between Challenger Tour titles.
Wow.
And previously that was Murray when he won the Provence Challenger in 2023. Cilic has gone even better with 17 years and 10 months between his last Challenger title, which I believe would have been, trying to do the math, 2007, would that have been?
Yeah.
So,
2007.
I mean, that is quite something. He won the title in Girona. His last title, I believe, was in Aptos. So, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm familiar with that Challenger event. Maybe it's no longer on the tour, but I rather liked that. And I'm just going to go one more kind of deep cut in the Challenger Tour. But Stan Wawrinka celebrated his 40th birthday, playing a Challenger in Naples. And I just thought that is a testament to his passion for the sport. And rather than thinking, that's not where you want to be, I think it just shows how much he does want to be playing tennis.
Yeah, that's so nice. Like, I mean, what a nice place to turn 40 as well. Have some nice, pizza after. I mean, plenty of other places you could spend your 40th birthday. So
a Challenger in Croydon, that could
it could be at the Croydon Challenger.
Yeah,
that Joel's gonna
one petitioning for.
One can dream.
One can dream. Well, I quite liked it was after the women's final on Saturday out in Miami. Obviously, Sabalenka winning that, which we'll get onto in a bit. But she was doing her post-match kind of TV interview in the studio, and they gave her a MargARYNA, her own custom cocktail.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Yeah, well, it wasn't me. I can't take credit for that. But Jpeg came along and pinched it from her right on the set, which I thought was a bold move, but one that I think shows, how nice that, the final was, how sporting it was, how they both get on, how they're both, fantastic champions and players and can have a laugh and a joke and, lighten up. And it's not all deadly serious sport, is it?
Well,
so I thought that was a nice moment.
If I was going to get a drink for Jessica Pegula, I think I would have to get her a Jessica
WKD?
Wooler.
Wow. I was going to say a Heineken because she drank one of those in a press conference.
How have we not had that from you before, Joel?
I don't know. A woo-wooler. Yeah.
I think no one's ever said that before.
No.
You're a first. That's original.
Can we make that a thing?
I think I would rather have a woo-wooler because I'm a vodka-based cocktail person than a tequila-based myself.
MargARYNA is actually quite a good name. It's much better to say than to read. I was not impressed when I saw that on Twitter, but now I'm fully on board. We need more drinks that are aligned with player names.
Listeners, let us know if you've got any drink associated puns for players' names. I feel like I've given a really terrible example, but if you've got better examples, let us know.
But don't ask us the question for the mailbag because we're clearly not great at it.
I mean, it might get our creative juices flowing. Maybe we could have a tennis-themed cocktail bar opening somewhere someday soon in Croydon at the Challenger event. But let's get on to the actual tennis that happened last week. And we'll start with the ATP side of things, because as we alluded to, Novak Djokovic, with his cold gloves, did reach the final. He wasn't able to get his 100th career title. I'm sure that is around the corner for him. But he did lose out to Jakob Mensik in 2 tie-break sets in the final. Mensik, one of the biggest risers, I think it's fair to say, on the tour. Definitely a player to watch. Only 19 years of age. And playing the match of his life to get the win and claim the biggest title of his career. He did beat the Indian Wells champion, Jack Draper, earlier in the tournament for the same scoreline, and he's gone all the way on to win the title. Joel, how impressed were you by Jakob Mensik? Not just throughout the whole tournament, but especially in that match against Djokovic yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like the build-up, no one was really giving Mensik a chance. They thought, this was going to be a real walkover for Novak Djokovic. The story was there and waiting. 100th ATP Tour title, 37 years of age. And it wasn't to be. No one was really, I think, giving Mensik a chance. And I think really that's been the story a little bit of kind of his his career on the tour so far, because some of the things he's achieved is pretty good for his age. I mean, he's the only teenager in the top 50. He's now won an ATP Masters title, but it seems to me that he always kind of gets overlooked maybe compared to other players such as Draper and Fonseca earlier in the season at the Australian Open. So kind of to come in, show no nerves in your first ATP final against a player whose kind of mere presence really, I think, can intimidate the opposition. And to do what he did, particularly in those kind of big moments, in those tie breaks, moments where we know that Novak Djokovic, that's one of his strongest aspects of his game, was very, 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 very special, very, very impressive. And I think it now, warrants him, more conversation about him, because I feel like he's been flying under the radar a little bit so far.
Yeah, Djokovic himself has, in terms of tie breaks, Djokovic has the best record on tour in terms of tie-break win percentage. But in this tournament, Mensik was 7 from 7, winning all his tie-break sets. Very pivotal, very calm under pressure there. I mean, how impressive is that, Chris? And how much do you think it was due to his serve, his big, big serve that got him through all those tie-break moments?
Well, it made a big impact in that first round match. I think we're looking at that Jack Draper result and thinking, hang on a minute, maybe we were a little bit harsh after that, saying he could be disappointed with that result.
This is like the best result for Draper
after
that defeat.
And it's the same scoreline that he beat Djokovic to. So there's no shame there either, that's for sure. But I think probably it's a case where the expectations he had going into this were quite low because he actually was planning on pulling out. He actually tried to find the referee to pull out the tournament and then instead took a physio appointment for his knee. And then he ended up staying in the tournament, and not only staying in the tournament, he won it all. So I think potentially the fact that he didn't necessarily have high expectations and also knew he probably had to get it done pretty quickly meant that those tie breaks were even more important for him. But when you have a serve like he has and averaging about 20 aces a match, you just feel like you're going to get those points. And not normally would you find a player of his age so mature in those situations. But when you have a serve like that, I mean, you should be winning the tie breaks. But having said that, Djokovic also served really well this week. I think it was probably one of his best serving displays in quite a long time. So I think overall, from Mensik perspective, not necessarily the biggest surprise we've ever had from a breakout performance, given the fact he was already lurking in the top 50 and Kim had already picked him to do something big this year. But probably I'd say a result that you wouldn't have thought definitely in the situation that he came into the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Djokovic obviously finding some form. I think, pleased to get to the final is his best result in a long time. And he's 18 years Mensik senior. I mean, Mensik was born in 2005 and
wow.
Djokovic was already in the top 100 of the rankings then, which is crazy. And would have been easy for Mensik to be overwrought playing his idol and, someone with such experience, but it really didn't show. But looking at Djokovic's tournament, he did struggle, it seemed, with his right eye in the final. It seemed aggravated. Yeah. He was using eye drops quite a bit. But how do you think he will have assessed his 2 weeks in Miami?
I think a lot better now than, I guess, after the result in Indian Wells. He certainly, for me, put himself back on the map in terms of like potentially a Grand Slam contender. I do think that Mensik did have a tougher run, to the final, but the way that he performed against Dimitrov in that semi-final, it was just lights out tennis. That to me was the closest performance we got to like the Djokovic of old, like the Djokovic, as I said, a contender for a Grand Slam title. And although, we didn't get the magical 100th century up in terms of those tour titles, it did give me that confidence that it's more of a question of when, not if, even though it's been still quite a long time coming.
Why do you think he's not able to necessarily put it together match after match? I think we're seeing a lot more up and down performances from someone who has the game to be the most consistent player on tour and has shown that over the years. It just feels like sometimes there's this unexplained sort of lack of form that he's sort of suffering from against players that he should be kind of swatting away quite easily. Do we think it's just a case of like, is it a motivation? Is it not necessarily playing as much on the tour means that he's not as sharp in those moments on return, for example? Physical injury, age. Like, it's strange to me to be in this situation where sometimes he plays like Novak Djokovic and sometimes he doesn't.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And as I said, he was like odds on favorite, for this match. And I don't feel like he like necessarily buckled like under that pressure. He's been under greater pressure, before. But I do wonder with, his match schedule and time, I think it's been harder for him to kind of get like momentum going into tournaments, and that's why maybe he's finding it tougher kind of in these moments. And with Miami as well, it's a 2-week tournament. It's very similar to Grand Slams, and you have to kind of keep it together, I guess, for a little bit longer. And maybe he's also kind of struggling with that a little bit because we've seen that before at Grand Slams. But yeah, it is a strange one, but I don't necessarily think his tennis was like under expectation. I just think that Mensik raised his level, played the best match of the tournament, and that's ultimately what delivered him the title.
Yeah, I mean, Djokovic did say it's the best he's felt since the Olympics, although he did acknowledge that Sunday was a weird day and he wasn't going to give excuses with his eye. But I mean, is it good news for Andy Murray and his coaching skills that we've got a final in the bag now with the Miami result? Joel, are you pleased as a long-time Murray fan that hopefully those board games helped?
I think the board games helped. I think it was a great, I think it's a good result because I think after Indian Wells, the kind of the pitchforks were out and everyone was sort of like, why is this this partnership is all 100% PR publicity. It's not really delivering anything, but actually I think this result has maybe kind of stifled those critics a little bit. So yeah, I think it's worked well. We're expecting it to continue. So I think from my Murray fan point of view, I think it's doing well. But Chris, I don't know if you have a different opinion.
I think it's good to see a block where they properly trained together. Obviously, going to Australia, they didn't have that much of a block because I think wasn't Andy Murray skiing or something like that. So it wasn't necessarily the perfect preparation as a duo going into that. I think it's good to see that in this period that they've had together, that the results have improved the more time they spent together. And I think probably not necessarily the biggest celebration after not winning a title when Djokovic has won so many big titles, but it has to be a positive indicator that the form is returning. But the bigger question I have beyond that partnership is what is going on the ATP Tour that means that Jannik Sinner is still the outright leader in the ATP race? He is 335 points clear of Zverev in the race, and he's only played one tournament. And so you think we're looking at some of these results, and I don't want to be critical of some of the winners that we've seen on the tour, but you'd have to think that probably if Jannik Sinner wasn't banned, he would at least be causing some trouble to some of these players who are picking up 1,000 titles that maybe haven't had that sort of form or result previously. And I think that's probably one of my big questions is the absence of Jannik Sinner allowing some of the other players to break through at this level? Or maybe not all the other players, like Djokovic is not breaking through, but you know what I mean.
I think yes, but I'm quite happy that we've had Draper and Mensik. I mean, I'm delighted that they've both won these titles. I think it's so refreshing. It gives them that chance. They've
Which has surprised you more, Kim? Which has surprised you more, Draper or Mensik?
She picked Mensik, didn't she, at the start of the year?
I think Draper probably, just because for Britishness generally we're sort of very
pessimistic.
Pessimistic. So I think that's actually like, it's not in our nature to expect great things, maybe. But I'm delighted, and not saying it, wouldn't have happened had Sinner not been at these events. But I think it's nice that, I mean, I don't really like any one particular player dominating unless it's Rafa Nadal.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously. But I think it's nice. It's been good for the tour. I think players like Alcaraz are going to be annoyed, though, that they haven't been able to capitalise. And we've also seen some players just having a real shocker, like Daniil Medvedev. He's now out of the top 10, which is unthinkable, really, given how consistent he's been over the last few years. So there's definitely been some players who've really lost out over this period.
It's quite surprising, isn't it, when you think about it, that Medvedev's out of the top 10. I think that's the bit that I kind of just latched onto there, because that's kind of crept up on us, hasn't it? The fact that his results haven't been giving him the ranking points that he needs.
Do you think that it's, just to your point earlier, I've been thinking about this, and I've wondered whether like the chasing pack has got bigger, with in the absence of Jannik Sinner. We've got two more names to add to the pot. And as a result, it's making that top 10, being in that top 10 more and more competitive. But at the kind of the other side of that, it feels like there's not really anyone kind of stepping up. And actually, we've seen more players probably step down. Medvedev, arguably Alcaraz as well. I will say, though, I think Alcaraz, he didn't play a lot of the build-up to the French Open last season. So he's got big opportunities to come on his, favored surface. So I still think there's, opportunity there for him, but it certainly feels like Sinner, without really doing much, has sort of cemented, his own place, his own island at the top of the rankings.
It must be fun, living the Sinner life right now, just watching, not tennis burn, but his opponents not necessarily put the form in. But do you think maybe Messi had an impact on Mensik's performance? Do you think it depends on who you're playing in front of, Joel?
Oh, I love this. I mean, two GOATs on one tennis court, Novak Djokovic and Lionel Messi. I mean, Lionel Messi, for all of our listeners, he plays for Inter Miami FC, and there was a little patter between him and Djokovic throughout the tournament. He also got snapped as well with Andy Murray, but it was nice to see him on centre court. It's always great, I think, to see two worlds collide, football and tennis. It's not really worlds you often associate with each other. But I love the fact that Messi, he actually scored, I think, during the week, and he did a little forehand celebration routine, which Djokovic acknowledged on his Instagram stories. So who knows? Maybe when Djokovic does win that 100th title, are we going to see a little? Are we going to see a little response for Messi? Maybe a pretend kick towards goal.
Could see that, or maybe Messi's going to go full Diego Forlan and pick up a tennis racket and hit the challenger tour.
Yes. Messi
in 10
on the
years'
challenger
time,
tour.
he'll be him and Novak will be playing doubles together,
mixed doubles
at the Cordoba Open,
or with Murray and Cilic or Stan Wawrinka. You know, they're loving.
They'll still be going age 50
right now. So
I did notice that Murray had a picture with Lionel Messi, and he asked the question all football fans want to ask Lionel Messi, and it was, but can you do it on a cold, rainy night in Stoke? And Messi's answer, it was,
where's Stoke?
Yeah. Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
What is Stoke? What is Stoke?
What is Stoke?
What is Stoke? Time to move on.
Just before we go on to the WTA result, I want to ask you, who is the next young breakout star winning a Masters 1000 event? You know, we've had Draper, we've had Mensik. Who do you think it's going to be? Fonseca, perhaps? Chris, I know you're always keeping an eye out for the young ones coming through. Who's your money on?
I've been saying for a while that, you know, Feast is going to do something big. And we had that big debate a while ago, probably about a year ago or something like that, Joel, where I thought that his ceiling was higher than Draper's. But I think probably based on the commitment levels and the discipline, I think maybe he's a little bit more unserious than Draper. But in terms of the game, I think he's had some deep runs.
Defeated Zverev in Miami.
He did indeed. And I think he's looking like he's building towards a breakout performance, having already won at 500 level previously. So I would have thought that maybe he would have actually got one of these big titles potentially before Draper or Mensik. But that would be my next player to up the ante. It's not necessarily the most surprising because obviously he has been right inside the top 20 for quite a while now. But that's who I'm looking for to do it next.
Well, let's see if that will come true. And that brings Miami to a close for the ATP side of things. And let's catch up now on week 2 at the Miami Open on the women's side, where Aryna Sabalenka did win the event. She did beat Jessica Pegula in the final in straight sets, 7-5, 6-2 on Saturday, just under 90 minutes. Pretty comfortable as the match wore on. And she obviously did get awarded her MargARYNA, which Jpeg then went on to steal. But Sabalenka will be delighted nevertheless, because she's had quite narrow losses in her last 2 finals. Out of the Australian Open to Madison Keys and in Indian Wells to Andreeva. So she's finally managed to get that off her back and come away with another hard court title. She does have quite a solid head-to-head over Jpeg, which probably did help. She's now 7-2 in their head-to-head. But Chris, how important do you think this win will be to kind of revitalize Sabalenka now she's got this title, in her trophy cabinet?
I think it was important for her to get a big title. As a world #1, as a player who expects a lot from herself, I think that Australian Open loss did take a big toll on her mentally. I think she really took a hit from that. And I think it's great to see that she's now back playing the tennis that she's best playing, front foot, big hitting, the serve working, and she's winning points or finding ways to win points, even when it's not necessarily going her way. Whereas in the last few months, she hasn't necessarily been finding the answers or necessarily wanting to find the answers or wanting it more than her opponent. It's something she's actually said out loud when she lost to Clara Towson. So I think it's great to see. I think for Jpeg, she's lost to her at quite a few of these big finals now.
She must be sick of seeing Sabalenka.
Yeah, the worst name to see on the draw sheet. But at least she always makes it to the final when she plays her, it seems. But at the same time, it didn't necessarily excite me hugely because I was expecting this sort of result. It didn't necessarily have the hype that it had of the US Open final, because that really did hit the heights from a tennis perspective. Whereas I think this one, maybe not quite as much, but either way, good result for both of them. And I mean, she's kind of just running away with the #1 ranking now as well, isn't she?
She's 3,000 points ahead of Swiatek. Swiatek, losing to Alex Eala here in the semi-finals, which we'll get onto in a second. But I mean, who do you think is Sabalenka's current top rival? Who is kind of the one most challenging her? Is it sort of Andreeva and
I was
the
thinking
youngsters coming
Raducanu,
through?
no?
Or was it herself, Joel?
Do you know, I was looking at the head-to-head records, and I think she still has a losing head-to-head against Swiatek and against, I think, Coco Gauff as well. And I still think that Swiatek is like her biggest rival. And we're going into the clay season now, which is obviously a real home, a real comfort, really. Well, Swiatek will be hoping that, coming up with the French Open. But, with this performance, the fact that she reached back-to-back finals, I think that she'll be feeling really good in terms of, usurping Swiatek at her home at Roland Garros and winning a first French Open title. So I still think I still think that Swiatek is probably her biggest competitor when it comes to the clay. I feel like the demons she's battling with herself, I don't necessarily see that much as much at the moment. But it's certainly there. I think she's primed and ready, I think, to do things for a first time even more. And I think that starts on the clay season with a first French Open trophy.
You think that's happening this year, Joel? 2025? Sabalenka?
Is that a prediction?
I think
Suzanne
so.
Lenglen?
I think so. I mean, she's streets ahead.
She's the
in
number
terms
one
of
ranked
ranking.
player. That's what you go for, Joel.
She is the number one ranked player. But I also think her all-round game at the moment, I think, in terms of kind of completeness on the tennis court, she is the most all-round athlete. And that's why it's so difficult for players like Jessica Pegula to really kind of get stuck in and, try and press Sabalenka, because there's so many different aspects of her game that can get her through the line. I mean, in the final, quite interestingly, she won 55% of her second serve points. So even when you think she might have a weakness, she's still doing incredibly well on it. She's living up to that world number one billing, which, other players like Alexander Zverev aren't necessarily doing. So I think that she can crack and win French Open this year. There we go. I've said it. I've laid my marker out early.
I mean, aside from Sabalenka winning, I think the other big story of the Miami Open on the WTA side was Alexandra Eala, of the Rafa Nadal Academy, shall we just say, going on a bit of a dream run to the semi-finals out of seemingly nowhere. She beat Swiatek in the quarterfinals. I was wrong earlier, but she's had such a cracking week. She's up to 75 in the world now, first Filipina player to do that, and she's really kind of made history for her country, and everyone's got behind her. It's been such a nice story. She's had some fantastic wins, but aside from her being another name we're going to hopefully look out for, and hopefully she'll keep this up, how impressive has it been to see kind of a new player that most people wouldn't have been too au fait with come through and beat, the likes of Iga Swiatek, and how worried should Swiatek be that she came a cropper there?
Oh, I mean, first question, how excited should we be? Very excited. I think we love it when a player breaks through, especially when, they've got they come from a relatively small place. I think it's great to see those stories, and tennis is quite often it's quite an elitist sport in terms of the people who are able to play it, and it's very much focused on certain tennis nations. So I think it's fantastic when you see someone break through wherever they may be from. I think it is great to see. And at this tournament, I mean, what a breath of fresh air. I mean, some of the players that she beat on this run, Ostapenko, Keys, and then Swiatek, I mean, didn't lose a set against any of those players. No one would have predicted that coming in as a wild card. So a real feel-good story there. And then almost taking out Pegula as well. I think that was also particularly exciting, that semi-final. I think that the level of tennis was great. I think the way she's taking on the ball in those big moments is great to see, because she's normally a bit more of a counterpuncher. But against Swiatek especially, she really stepped up and really kind of put her game onto Swiatek, which is probably a problem because Ayala's not necessarily like the biggest hitter on tour. And I think that is the problem for Iga, is she is being hit off the court despite being one of the best movers on tour as well. Lots more mistakes than she would have wanted in that match. So not the result she would have hoped for there, and probably quite symbolic of quite a significant loss in form, and probably a testament to the fact that mentally she's not quite where she needs to be at the moment.
And do you think there's a coaching situation going on with Swiatek? She's been working with Wim Fissette, who formerly coached Osaka, since October. They haven't quite got their rhythm together. So, Joel, do you think she needs to maybe change things up? Is Wim Fissette not the right coach for her?
I still think it's early days, and I still think there's just ridiculous levels of expectation put on Swiatek. I mean, her record is still 21-6 in the season. She's still the world number two. But certainly with the clay season coming up, the stakes are higher, and as you said, it doesn't sound like the dynamic between those two is working as well as it could be. And it was quite interesting to hear Swiatek in press actually talk about the fact that Fissette, while she's on a tennis court, Fissette is actually sending her too many messages. There's too much feedback going on, and she's not able to kind of compute it or process all these messages that are coming towards her. So it just gives you a little insight maybe there in terms of actually there's work to do in terms of that setup, particularly during the matches, that isn't quite clicking, because we've seen Swiatek get flustered, we see her get frustrated, and as a result, it's almost kind of blocking her, I think, from playing her best tennis. So yeah, definitely work to do there.
We don't talk enough about that split that did happen with her previous coach, which was at a very strange time. We didn't know why it happened, because at the time the test result hadn't been announced and the ban that she faced. And you do wonder what went down there, because at the point of the split, it had not been such a long period since she'd won a title. She had picked up a slam that season, only the singular slam at that point. And it does make you think that potentially that wasn't her choice. That he did part ways with the team as opposed to her letting him go, which makes you think that this is trying to find that magic formula again, which can sometimes be really hard to find, especially when you don't, get off to a great start. I mean, Raducanu doesn't give coaches that long before she gets rid of them in that sense. Yeah. And maybe there is something in actually shopping around a bit more before you do settle on someone. Just because they've had great success with other people doesn't mean it's the right match for you. And I think if the clay season doesn't have big rewards, you've got a lot of points to defend. If she doesn't win Roland Garros, then Iga Swiatek's in a very different situation as a top 10 player and not as an active Grand Slam champion.
Yes. I mean, everyone's got, different needs. Everyone's going to have a different fit. It's not one size fits all, is it? And before we move on, got one question for both of you. Who do you think has been the biggest sort of winner or gainer from the sunshine or swamp swing, as we called it earlier?
Swing, yeah.
One name, Chris.
Biggest winner. Oh, that is a tricky one.
There's an obvious candidate.
You go first then, Joel.
I'm not going to say the obvious candidate, which is Sabalenka, but I would say Emma Raducanu. Who, was fantastic in Miami, got to the quarterfinals, pushed Jessica Pegula to 3 sets as well. And we didn't talk about it last time, but, she was working with Mark Petchey as an advisor, let's say, on, in her camp. And it seemed to be working really well for her. And she's put some of the best matches I think we've seen her play since that US Open run. So for me, big winner, Emma Raducanu.
I'll maybe say Paolini for finding some form again. I think this was quite important for her heading into defending a lot of points. I think that's probably a big winner.
Semi-finalist here. Yeah, losing to Sabalenka in Miami. And what about sort of on a negative note, the sort of biggest loser of this period?
Chris, I will add today, it was interesting. Paolini and her coach have split after 10 years.
Well, that is an interesting result, isn't it? I think, well, thank goodness she got a good result this week. But I'd say maybe Coco Gauff probably would be in the conversation around players who maybe didn't perform as well as they'd like to. I think that's also very fair. But I mean, either way, that's the beauty of this part of the season. We do a 180, we head to clay, and then you can definitely pick up some form in some longer matches. They tend to be a lot longer, a lot more physical, and you can rely on the physical strengths that you have rather than just kind of the form that you may not have when you're playing on the hard courts.
All change on the surfaces very shortly. And clay can work its mysterious ways, can't it? So very much looking forward to that. Let's take a quick break now, but do join us in the second half, where we'll be discussing Daria Kasatkina switching her allegiances from Russia to Australia, Rublev adding Marat Safin to his coaching setup. And we'll also be looking ahead to all the tournaments this week as the European clay swing gets underway. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, brought to you by Sports, Travel and Hospitality Group. And it's time, as always, to kick off the second half with another game. Joel, over to you for a very exciting par for the courts. And I wonder if I'm going to do what you just did earlier and not say the obvious answer yet again.
There's a few answers to this par for the courts, and it's.
I think I've got it, Joel.
Tasty.
Is it players that have defected from their country of birth?
I did look at that, but
are there enough?
There wasn't enough names, and I was thinking of doing Miami Open ladies champions since the 2000, because we did the men's
last week.
However, I found another category that I thought was even juicier and has a touch of nostalgia to it as well. And it's in celebration of Jakob Mensik winning his first Masters 1000 title.
Right.
So my question for you both in this par for the courts back and forth is, there are 14 players who have won one ATP Masters title in the 2010s decade.
That's tricky, isn't it?
Is this ATP or WTA?
ATP
okay.
Masters title. So Masters title, M1000, whatever you want to call it. 2010 season to the end of the 2019 calendar year. There are 14 players who've won just one Masters title.
So we're saying not after 2020.
Not after 2020. I was
just
looking
the
at
noughties.
that.
No, the 10s, sorry.
That, but I thought it was a little bit too easy, but maybe that'll
too recent.
Too recent, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And we've got some big names here.
We can do it. 14. We can do it.
This is actually quite tricky, Kim.
Yeah, I've got one.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
We're supposed to be getting 7 each.
Can we have
do you want a life each?
A one lifeline. Yeah, let's do that. I think we might need it.
Ooh.
I actually might only have one as well.
Okay.
There's
some big names here. There are some big
that have only won one.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Shall I go first?
Go on, Kim.
I'm going to say Jack Sock.
Jack Sock.
That's a great one.
Is a correct answer. Very good, Kim. 1-0 to Kim.
Well, you've actually given me one there. Because Kachanov did a similar thing. I think he won it the year after in Paris.
Karen Kachanov.
Yes.
Is a correct answer. Yes. It was on the list. That's one apiece.
And both still have a lifeline.
Both with a lifeline still.
Could I play devil's advocate? Can it be a player that's won one in the 10s and then won another one in the 20s?
They could possibly.
Does that work?
No, surely not.
They could possibly, but
so
there's not many, I would say, on that list.
You can't have Nadal. That's what you're thinking.
No, it wasn't. Thomas Berdych.
Thomas Berdych. Kim, you've lost the lifeline.
Did he lose the lifeline?
He must have won more than one then. Oh, damn.
Yes, I'm looking for 1 and 1.
Or did he win
only.
it before that decade?
Oh, he might have done actually, yeah.
Did he spring onto the tour with a good result?
Kim, you've lost your lifeline.
Okay.
Right. You think you went out on him last week as well? I think you said Berdych again. I think you've been double Berdych. Yeah. The opposite of a birdie. Right. I've still got a lifeline.
You can go into the lead here.
I think that I'm thinking Cilic.
I had
just because we talked about him earlier.
Marin Cilic?
Yeah.
That's the correct answer. Yes, Marin Cilic.
Now the pressure really is
He's
on Kim.
On the list.
I know.
So Chris is 2-1 in the lead. Kim, you've got no lifelines and you need to give me a correct answer to stay in the game.
And don't go for a rogue one, Kim. Come on. Don't go for the loophole of 1 in the 10s and 1 in the 20s.
No. This is probably the hardest par for the courts. Yeah, I think.
I thought this was a good one.
I think it's quite hard.
Going to be hard. Okay.
Oh gosh. Sorry, listeners don't want to hear me just erring, do they?
We can edit this out for the podcast, but maybe not on YouTube. It's fun to watch.
I'm going to go really out there and just say Fernando Verdasco, which I think is wrong.
Has he won one?
Fernando Verdasco. It's an incorrect
Oh,
answer.
no.
Kim Verdasco not on the list. So, Chris, you don't need to give me an answer because you've already won. But have you got any other answers for me?
I thought I potentially David Ferrer.
Yeah, David Ferrer
I went for the wrong Spaniard.
is a correct answer.
I don't know about the date. I was thinking Soderling.
Soderling is a correct answer. Yes.
And then I was thinking,
Soderling.
what about Songa?
Very good. Songa on. See, Chris is smashing it. Any others? Kim?
I was thinking of
Thoughts?
Juan Monaco. But I don't think that's correct.
Is that how you say his name?
No, I don't
I always called
know.
him Monaco.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Monaco.
That's interesting.
Monaco.
Okay.
It's like Benjamin Bonsai all over again.
Songa probably won more than one, didn't he?
What about Carreno Busto?
Seppi?
No,
Okay,
incorrect. So
Fognini. He won in Rome.
Fognini,
Oh.
yes, Fognini's right. PCB did win, but that was in the 2020s. The full list
Who else
is
could we have had?
as follows. So these are players who won one Masters title in the 2010s decade.
Oh, Zverev? Would he?
Oh,
sorry.
Davydenko.
Oh, Davydenko.
Cilic.
Sorry.
No.
Del Potro, Dimitrov,
Oh, Del Potro.
Ferrer, Fognini, John Isner,
Oh,
Of
Miami.
course.
Karen
Yeah.
Kachanov, Ivan Lubicic, Andy Roddick, Jack Sock, Robin Soderling, Dominic Thiem,
Oh,
Joe Wilfred Songa, and the final one, we've already mentioned his name on the podcast,
Stan.
Stan the Man,
Oh,
Stan
dear.
Wawrinka.
Andy Roddick.
Mm.
I had
But-
been thinking team,
but
but
then- So it was players
Yeah.
who had just won
Difficult.
one, and they could have won titles before, but
Yeah.
they've. Oh, see, give us too many rules, Joel.
Okay,
We've got-
I thought
we've
it
got
was
no
a fun
chance.
one.
It
I
is a
thought
fun
it was a
one.
fun one.
The lifeline was needed, though. I think otherwise that would have been quite short.
Listeners,
yeah,
let
I
us know.
struggled.
Yeah, listeners, let us know. Did you struggle as much as Kim and Chris, or
I
actually?
don't think
were
we
you
did
doing well?
badly. Yeah.
No, I don't think you did badly.
Okay, good. Thank you, Joel.
It was acceptable, but yeah, I struggled with that. But listeners, yeah, I hope you did better, but let us know.
We'll do
And
that
let's
with
have a look.
WTA actually next week for you two.
Ooh.
Oh,
Just
you'll
for
nail
Joel.
that
No,
one,
just for
Chris.
Joel.
Oh,
Yeah.
now I'll be squirming.
Yeah.
Listeners, let's move now on to the mailbag, where we do have a question from Rose Richards on X, who asked us, when two of your faves are playing each other, who do you root for? Do you go with the one that you knew first, the one that's most likely to win the next match, or the one who needs the confidence boost or the points the most? So her example was she was cheering for Amanda Anisimova to win, but also Mira Andreeva not to lose. So I assume Rose is a big fan of both of those players. So thanks, Rose, for getting in touch. Always welcome to hear everyone's questions. It's a difficult one. I know my answer. I'm going to come to you guys first. Joel,
This
I
is
know
a
you were a
great
big,
question. This is a
big
great
Andy Murray
question.
fan, but did anyone else compare for you? Did you have this dilemma over anyone?
I always remembered like the little overlap actually between Murray and Tim Henman, because I'm a big, I grew up with Tim Henman. I always loved watching him play. I thought he was underappreciated because of not winning Wimbledon title. But I remember watching him Queens and the Stella Artois Championships, and I just loved it. So when I saw this kind of new kid on the block with Andy Murray coming on, it sort of left me in that dilemma. And I'm not gonna lie, when I began with, and I didn't really know like the potential of Murray, I just wanted to see Tim Henman have basically kind of stick it out as long as possible. So it was more for me the one I would know first.
And
Interesting.
Chris, what about yourself? I know you're a big fan of Sloane Stephens and
Yes.
Daniela Hantuchova. Did they
Yes.
ever play, perhaps?
I actually don't remember if they have, but I mean, I've seen Sloane versus Emma Raducanu live, and there was a bagel involved, and I wouldn't have been mad. I think in that match, actually, they both needed the win in Eastbourne last year, so that I couldn't go on that. I tend to go. I do love to support a Brit. I think it's always good to support them where you can. We had the Draper versus Runa match, and people thought I might be supporting Holger, but I did go obviously Draper in that one. the only one that's really sort of got me, and it tends to be where I support the person who's a bit down bad or, who might not have as many opportunities left, is when Venus and Serena played each other, where I think I like them both the same. But it definitely was a case of when Serena started to win a lot more, I really rooted for the underdog in Venus because I really felt like there were lots of opportunities that maybe she would have won more had it not been for Serena. And I'd like that balance to be a little bit more even, potentially, based on the fact that I think that they both were such fantastic champions. But I don't know, Kim, what about you? What if Samsonova's playing Sramkova?
Well, I mean,
who would you
goes
support
now.
in that match? Yeah,
anything kind of goes now. To be fair, Rafa was my main, person, and against anyone, I would always support him. And I used to get people in the UK say, "Oh, what about if he's playing Andy Murray?" And I'd be like, "So I don't care.
Okay.
It's Rafa and no one else." But now, I don't have that sort of one player that I'm, so I'm a bit more kind of, oh, I'd like so and so to win because I think they need a bit of a boost, or it'd be nice if they won because they haven't won something for a while. But I don't have a hardcore favorite in the same way that I used to.
You like the young players coming up. So if someone is on the way out or on the way up, is that your picks normally?
I think on the way up, yeah, because I feel like in that moment, unless it's like their final tournament or something.
So that's kind of the opposite of Joel. Joel's like, no. Sorry, Jack. Sorry, Andy.
No,
I'm not ready yet.
The old guard to
wants wooden rackets to come back
as long as possible. I will say though, I actually think there's a fourth option here, and it's just
you don't want either of them to win.
No, you're
going to be
players.
The player next that you don't like.
No.
Sorry.
I struggled with the Wimbledon final between Djokovic and Kyrgios because I didn't really want either of them to win.
Okay.
As a sort of other side of this question,
I think the fourth option is you want tennis to win.
Yes.
And you want both players to play well. So well, in fact, that you don't feel like there's a loser. There we go.
Someone does have to lose, though.
No drawn match in tennis, as Rose said.
Tennis is the winner.
Right.
Well, thank you, Rose, for your question. Keep them coming, everyone. And we look forward to next week to see what discussions we can have there as well. And let's look on now to some of the news from the last week. We've had World number 12, Daria Kasatkina, defecting nationality to Australia. She's been granted permanent residency in Australia and will now represent them going forwards. Obviously, she is originally Russian-born, but has been competing under a neutral flag since the invasion began in 2022. So I'm sure she's delighted to now be representing a new country and participating there and being accepted by the Australian government. Do you welcome this news? I mean, we know that she's been quite outspoken about kind of the regime, and she has her reasons for switching. But how do you think she'll fare as a new Aussie down under?
Well, she's certainly a character, isn't she? When we've spoken to her, she's, very engaging. Her vlogs are fantastic. And I think it's a case when she did make such vocal comments about the regime and her lack of, the fact she doesn't support what is going on, but she does love her homeland. You did hope that she found another place to call home, because it was quite clear that she would not be welcome back in Russia. So I think that this was probably a story that surprised quite a lot of people, because you can't really talk about it until you've got something concrete that's been worked on. So I think it's very good that, given the fact that, she has obviously got a female partner, she's in a same-sex relationship, you do worry about, some of the impact that might have if she were to return to her homeland in that sense. So for her, it's a very good news. I'm very happy for her. I think that, the fact that she spent so much time in Australia when it comes to tennis players spend, the Australian summer down under. I think that's nice that it's not somewhere that's completely different from where you spent time previously. It does sound like she's going to be making Australia her home. So this is a case that she probably hasn't necessarily already moved there, I believe, and she's going to be moving to Melbourne. But she's the Australian number one. That's the only thing that is quite funny about these things when people swap, is suddenly you've got a new player who is just going to top the rankings for your country, which, if you haven't got a particularly great number one, like Australia haven't got an Ash Barty at the moment, you probably would be rejoicing. It might help you in a few clashes, but it is a bit strange when suddenly someone swaps and then they're top of the rankings for that country. So that's the only thing that is a bit odd about this. But overall, I think it's got to be positive for her.
Yeah, help the Billie Jean King Cup squad out, although I don't know if any of the current Aussie players might be a bit like, oh, that's my place gone from the team.
Yeah.
I don't, you know,
Priscilla Hon. Yeah.
I always remember that because there was always those kind of. I remember there was kind of frustrations with. Do you remember when Aliash Bedene played
from
for
Slovenia,
GB, and Dan Evans? I don't think was particularly happy.
And Konta made the swap as
that.
well, didn't she?
But I mean, it's funny because you look at other players who've changed, you know, allegiances from Russia. A lot have gone to Kazakhstan. You know, Rybakina, Bublik, Shevchenko, Putintseva. All kind of went to Kazakhstan. So for me, when I saw this, and I was like, Kasatkina, has she got like an Australian grandparent, or what's the link? But I think it's
just better weather probably than Kazakhstan.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, there's quite a lot of players who are on the sort of Kazakhstan program now. And I think that was why Rybakina actually swapped, because she wasn't getting the opportunities. It was pre-war. She wasn't getting the opportunities that she would have liked. So I think there tends to be a bit more behind the moves when you go for somewhere that wants to attract tennis players, like Kazakhstan obviously wanted to, and to give them like a foothold on the international stage. But it does feel like a bit like some of the other players that have gone. I think Daria Saville, when she moved to Australia, she then swapped as well, but that was prior to her marrying her partner. So Australia seems to be very much welcoming to this sort of thing. And I'm sure that based on some of the Australian listeners who've said it's brilliant that she's come and joined them, I think she will be kind of well received. But I guess unless you're the number 5 or number 4 from that country, you probably don't necessarily welcome this one.
Yeah, well, let's see how it lands, and I'm sure we'll see her representing Australia in the imminent future. Talking about sort of, other Russian players, Andrei Rublev, he has reportedly now added Marat Safin to his coaching team for the clay court season. So this is a tennis journalist based in Russia who sort of does his PR. Safin is joining the team, not replacing his existing coach Fernando Vicente, but just joining and adding insight for the clay season. What do you make of this news? Are you welcoming Safin getting
that will
involved
help the anger management issues, won't it? Adding Marat Safin.
Teach him how to really smash a racket.
What's he advising him on? Is it the best way to break a racket without getting a point penalty or something?
Worst use of challenges. That was definitely a Marat Safin offense, I think. But I mean, I was not expecting him to add another coach to the roster at this point. I know that he's been struggling with some form, but it felt like he had kind of picked up with that title earlier in the season. I was just thinking as well, Safin, was he particularly good on clay? I've just had a quick look at some of his results, and he did make a semi-final once and one quarter-final, but apart from that, not really making the second week very much. So is this more of a switch over, a changing of the guard, as opposed to like a clay court specialist? Because we've seen people add clay specialists for the clay court swing. We don't often see someone being added that's probably more of a grass courter, hard courter than they are a clay player. What do you think, Kim?
Well, yeah, I was going to say Safin's not known for his clay court specialisms, but he will be debuting at the UTS event, which is next week. Well, from the 6th of April. This week, and then it's Monte Carlo after that. So they've got a bit of time ahead of the clay at the UTS event. But yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's more of a sort of mentorship figurine rather than sort of tactics. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see how it runs, and let's just hope that Safin's maybe turned a corner with his anger as well, and it doesn't
imagine
lead
if they're
Rublev
both
back the other way.
Imagine the scenes,
They both get sent off.
I am just reading. Apparently, he helped Rublev with some of his mental health issues after Wimbledon. So there might have been some connection already, and maybe it's just a bit
journey that Safin has gone on already.
That's what I was thinking. You know, he's been there, done that with everything.
He's older and wiser.
Come through on the other side. So maybe it is
that could be very nice. But also there are trained professionals out there who you could also hire from the mental health side of things that might not be Marat Safin. But I mean, hopefully it all works out very well for them.
Results may speak for themselves, so we'll see how the next few weeks
I will say,
unfurl.
I feel like Safin was one of the best players at channeling anger into really good tennis. And there might be something to be said of that for Rublev, and maybe not like getting rid of the anger, more like channeling it in the right way, and maybe leaning into Safin's insight for that.
Did we find it hard to watch? Do we think? I've always thought it was more amusing with Safin, but maybe I'm remembering wrong. Yeah. But was he as angry?
I feel like he was a bit of a hothead from back in the day, from
right?
What I remember.
Yeah. So we're on a redemption journey, and let's see what happens.
Well, the clay swing has very well begun. This week we've got WTA 500 event in Charleston. We've got a 250 in Bogota for the WTA, and then we've got 3 ATP 250s in Marrakesh, Bucharest, and Houston. So all sorts of things happening all over the place. I suppose the biggest event this week is the Charleston event on the WTA side. We've got Jpeg and Madison Keys headlining that one. Any thoughts on the Charleston draw?
I think, didn't I see, is Heather Watson in this draw? Did she get a wild card?
Yeah,
and Harriet Dart is also in the draw.
It's a big draw, isn't it, for a 500?
I did enjoy in qualifying. Bethany Mattek-Sands was playing in the singles. I think she lost to Zhang.
I did spot that as well. I thought you'd love that, Joel.
Yeah, I think there's some talk that's basically going to be the final ever singles match anyway, of Bethany Mattek-Sands.
I feel like we've been there before, and I did predict the semi-final at the US Open for her last year, remember?
Yes. Oh, yeah, Freudian slip that one. Well, we'll have to see if she does pop up again in a draw. But any thought who's winning this one, do you think?
Maria Sakkari.
Maria Sakkari.
I'm going to go.
Sakkari's going to finally happen,
Sakkari. I think Sakkari. I could see
Kasatkina for Australia.
A Bencic, Schneider.
I'm going to go Navarro.
So we're saying everybody. Anyone can win this one.
But it's going to be an American.
The big one is
at home.
Bogota, right?
Bogota. Oh, well, let's have a look who we've got there. Buzkova and Camila Osorio are the top 2 seeds. This is full of, top.
Does Osorio love playing at home?
Yeah, she does. Maria's won this a lot of times.
Oh, yes, Maria, yes.
Fran Jones also very good here.
Yeah, Fran Jones is there. Sara Sorribes Tormo, perhaps we'll have another few marathon matches from her.
I feel like this is like the toughest event on isn't it like so high above sea level that this is, one of the most punishing events you could play. Clay,
it's going to be tricky.
Slow courts, hot, sticky.
Yeah. It's not a stacked draw, put it that way.
Yeah.
All the Americans out in Houston. We've got Tommy Paul and TFO as the top seeds there. Brandon Nakashima's there. Alex Mickelson. So strong chance an American might win out in Houston. I don't know about you, but lots in the draw. And then we've got in Marrakesh, Talon Griegspoor and Lorenzo Sonego as the top 2 seeds. And last but not least, Bucharest, Sebastian Baez and Pedro Martinez as the top 2 seeds. So definitely some clay quarters there, ready to get some silverware, I think.
It's going to be a surprise week, isn't it? Don't you think? There's going to be some results.
Some surprise names.
Yeah.
I think Jaume Munar. He's on some.
He's been doing well. Yeah, he's been having some good form.
In Marrakesh, maybe.
Stan Wawrinka is in Bucharest, so he's not on the Challenger circuit this week. But that brings us to a close, I think. We'll be back next week to round up on all of those events, and we'll see who is picking up those first titles in the clay swing, the European/American clay swing, not the golden clay swing.
Not the golden swing. That was earlier in the season. But yes, the European/American clay swing is here. We're going to wrap it up there for our latest tour catch up here at Tennis Weekly HQ. We hope you've enjoyed the ride with us. Remember to subscribe to us so you don't miss a moment on the ATP and WTA tours. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favorite podcasting platforms out there.
And if you love what you're hearing, then be sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube.
And stay connected with us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, and Threads. So make sure you follow us on all of those. Maybe not all of them. That might be quite a lot of us. So pick your favorites and follow us there. And you can also get in touch with us. If you have a mailbag question, you can always email that to us, or you can message that to us on social media at tennisweeklypod@gmail.com, or visit our website, tennisweekly.co.uk.
And we'll be back next week for another tour catch-up brought to you by Sports Travel and Hospitality Group. But until then, it's goodbye from Kim.
Goodbye.
It's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time on Tennis Weekly.